welcome to this week's Karma Cards. Man, okay, this energy, right? I don't know about you, but I've been feeling like January has been going on for months now. I honestly am like, is it April? Like, this feels like such a long month, and yet so much is happening. So much is moving and shifting. We're in this double retrograde, the Venus retrograde that I've been talking about, plus Mercury retrograde, and we just had the full moon a couple weeks ago. The new moon is coming up on February 1st. So I feel this shift. February is definitely going to have an energetic shift. I feel like we're going to feel like we're coming out of slow motion. And it's really weird because there is a speeding up of the mind, but a perceptual, so the speeding up of the mind is creating this feeling like time is moving really fast. But then we check back in with time as it is, and it feels like we're in this slow, stodgy sort of state. So I honestly feel as we hit February, that feeling is going to correct itself. We're going to be moving out of the Venus retrograde on the 29th of January. And then on February 3rd, Mercury moves direct again. And so it's sort of like this weird sped up mind finally like matches timing again. So I'm looking forward to that. And before I forget, if you'd like to join us for the next Spirit Circle, which is a new moon, that's all about manifesting. And it's happening on the 1st, like the access point of the 1st and 2nd of the month, which I think is so cool that the first couple of new moons in 2022 all seem to happen right at the beginning of the month. So it's like a really good time to focus on what you want to draw in for that month. And if you'd like to join us for that, you can go to this link here, blythestarlight.com/spirit-circles, and join us for that, for some manifesting work as well as some psychic Q&A live. I have a question for you right now. And my question for you is just based on the energetics that are going around. And I definitely got this question asked to me by my team. This morning I heard it and I was like, whoa, this was such a deep question. And the question was, are you focusing more on what you didn't get than what you have now, or that what you have or what you can give, right? So are you focusing more on what you didn't get? And honestly, I feel like they were saying this to me in terms of relationship, because that's the energetic, right? The Venus retrograde, just to remind you really quick, is about going in, looking at relationships, looking at what are you trying to get? What are you trying to get from someone? We do this. We do. We have unconscious, beliefs about what's going to happen in a relationship. I'm going to get love. I'm going to get security. I'm going to get supported. We have all these beliefs around what we're going to get out of a relationship. And each of our different relationships will hold different beliefs around that. So we're being asked to look, what am I expecting to get here? And then, of course, the higher question is, now how can I take that pressure off the other person and start giving that to myself, right? And we understand relationships are give and take, right? So they're not a one-way street. It's not like the universe expects us to just give. Just give. Don't expect anything back. Just give. That's not what we get. But we're doing a type of mental inventory, it's like when you declutter your home, you're decluttering the mental space of relationships right now, especially with Mercury being in tandem, and that's sort of a internal look at the mind and our thought processes. This happening at the same time with Venus doing some cleanup around love and money. I should mention the relationship to money as well is one being highlighted. So if you feel like, yeah, the relationship things are pretty secure, I feel like I've done a lot of work around relationships, so I don't have a lot to do here, then I'll ask you, okay, go look at your relationship with money. Is that being triggered or activated? Is anything being asked of you there? 9 times out of 10, probably yes. But going back to this question of, am I focusing on what I didn't get? Works for both relationships and money as well. Are you focusing on the money you didn't get, the money you didn't earn, the money that was owed that never showed up, right? The financial support maybe you thought you were going to get that doesn't seem to be showing up. Is that what you're focusing on? In terms of relationship, are you focusing on the things that you didn't get in the past from this? Like, look at the parental relationship. I know a lot of us have feelings about what we didn't get from that relationship. Is that something that you're still actively holding on to? Because it colors our perspective. It colors how we see things. It definitely colors how we see that person, whatever the relationship we're looking at, whether it's the marriage or romantic relationship, friendship, parents, whatever. When we're focusing on what we didn't get from that person, we're also coloring what they're giving to another. We're writing a story about, if it's a parental relationship and you feel like you didn't receive something you needed, the kind of support you felt like you needed from that parent. And let's say you have a sibling and you see the sibling receiving support that you felt you needed. How is that making you feel? What is the story you're telling yourself around that? Is it a story about how you're not valued as much, that you're not as worthy, or you're not cared for as much? So these are the stories we're being asked to identify during this process, and we're in the cumulative phase of this retrograde with Venus. So it's like it intensifies before it's done. It's like it comes to its crescendo. So I feel like this is going to be brought out more with Mercury adding the speed of mind. So Mercury retrograding in Aquarius creates this very quick mind that's pointed inward. So I feel like there's a real blessing here to seeing this. It's like you can see it and process it a lot faster right now than maybe at another time when these two are sort of doing their own thing separately, or the energy is more outward directed about what you're sending out, where this is about kind of, again, it's the decluttering, looking at what baggage am I holding, because that is the baggage, what I didn't get. If I'm so fixated on this, I'm always going to approach this relationship from that point. You didn't give me this thing I needed. You didn't give me your support. You didn't give me your loyalty. You didn't give me a safe space to be vulnerable. Whatever it is, we know the things we didn't get. In fact, that's the point, is that they're super highlighted in our mind. Now, the irony about focusing on this so much is there's nothing you can do about that. And that's kind of a tough love truth there, is that the moment is over. The moment that you felt someone failed to show up for you in the way you wanted them to has already happened. And it can't be changed. When we don't let it go, we are coloring that person with that. We're sort of stamping it on them. You failed here. Fail! Like a big stamp or a big X on that person. So it's coloring our perception, because even if they are showing up for us now, if we're still holding on to what we didn't get, we're never going to see how they show up for us now. It's always sort of, again, colored over. It's glazed. It's like, well, yeah, you did show up for me here, but that's not enough because I needed you back then and you didn't, right? And here's the thing. I want to be, as much as I'm bringing this to the surface and being like, look at this, I also want you to be super gentle with yourself if you find that this is active for you. If you're like, oh, I can recognize that. Let's be super gentle with ourselves, because there's a wounded part that's holding on. So that also needs to get addressed. It's not like, hey, knock it off, grow up, right? We don't want to talk to ourselves in such a way where we're sort of bullying ourselves to heal. That's not going to work. What we need to see is that part is holding the key that Venus is looking for, right? The gold I talked about in previous karma cards, where you're going to go down there and you're going to mine for gold. That's the gold. The wounded part holding this onto this story about what they didn't get. That's the key. of what you need to give yourself. Because if that's still active, if it's still wounding you, if it's still something you hold on to and you tell yourself about your relationship to this other person, it's telling you, this is what you need. This is what you're not giving me. I'm not healed because I'm not getting this key, this piece of gold right here. So that's what we want to look at. And it's such an interesting type of work to do, because you need to be honest with yourself, which can feel really painful. It can feel really cold. And for those of us who have egos that are they're more activated by what you're not than what you are. So there's ego that's bravado, which is like overexposure, making something larger than it is to feel better about themselves. Then there are egos that I see more often, which break themselves down, and they're the worst. And that's how that ego activates. It's not I'm the best, it's I'm the worst. So we've really got to stay mindful when we're in here facing these truths about ourselves, because it's fodder for those type of egos that are like, I'm the worst, I am nothing, I don't deserve anything good, nothing good's going to happen to me. Those egos will clutch on. Mine wanted to do that, that's for sure. That's where my ego does tend to go. If it's going to take me out, it's going to take me down before it takes me out. So as soon as I saw the story about what I didn't get, my ego wanted to latch onto that. And it was like, see how you're look, you're such a selfish person. All you're focused on is your own needs. What about someone else's needs? Now look where you're doing it over here. And here's a relationship you're probably doing it too. And it takes that self-love to say stop, right? And so we need to enter these types of self-discovery, self-reflection with a intention of being compassionate, loving, kind, and forgiving to ourselves for whatever it is we find. Because in the moment that thought was created about you didn't give this to me or it's not enough, there was real pain attached to that. There was, there may have been an expectation in you, but it was probably innocently formed. It wasn't like, I'm going to lay this expectation on you and expect so much from you so that you can fail me. That's never the mindset, right? It's always like, I need you because I don't believe in that I have this, but I believe you do, and I believe you can give it to me. And when that falls short, when we're not getting that met, that's when the wounding starts. That's when I felt like not only did I fail, but you failed me now. And now I fail again because I can't let it go, right? So you see that sort of vicious circle that wants to play out. So we need to ask for a higher form of ourself to come through and do this work. So it's like we need to invoke our higher self. We need to invoke a higher power, whether you want to invoke angels, spirit guides, God, deity, it doesn't matter. It's just as long as it's a higher version that you can connect to of yourself, right? So all these are connected to you in some way, but it's like I'm reaching for this higher power to stand with me as I approach these very delicate and sensitive areas and face my own truth, so that there is an awareness around us that what I'm looking at, I no longer have to hold. I don't have to judge it or condemn it. I just have to see it and be willing to listen to its knowledge, and then a desire to unify with it. So as soon as I have the information I need to bring that part of me back into the fold and say, you know what, I'm giving it to you now. The support you felt like you didn't get then, I am here now and I am supporting you right now. And there's that work. There's the complete cycle where we can then close the book on that story. And what you're going to find is then you can look upon the other person. And once you're free of that story, and some people, you might have many story's about. So it's like, it might be layers of doing that work, and that's okay. Once you take a couple, even just a couple, one layer even off of that person, it's going to shift your perspective about what you're looking at here. You're going to start seeing the things that maybe you've taken for granted because it doesn't match the story you were telling. And that's something our brain does, right? Our brain, my team's like, yup. They're like, ding, yes. Something our brain does when we have an overlay of a story about someone else and their behavior is we will selectively edit out the things that don't match that story. So when they do something that's not characteristic of the story, and our brain's like, I don't know. We're just going to put this one, we're going to cut it out of the movie and put it in the bin because I don't know, that information doesn't match my story of what this is, right? So once we take that filter, the overlay, the story off, now suddenly those pieces make sense. Now suddenly we can remember, we can actually reincorporate them and be like, oh, that actually, yeah, they were very supportive during that period. Or I actually did get my needs met. There was a quality of relationship there that really worked. So I want to bring that to your attention because it's very highlighted right now. And the other part, which is also one of those things that's like, it's hard to accept, even though it's the thing that'll set you free, is that if you're constantly focusing on what you didn't get, whether it's in relationship, with money, with career, with the home, whatever it is, that I didn't get this, you're focusing on lack. And here's the interesting thing is we tend to think about lack in terms of money. And if we're like, oh no, money's always coming. Money's my friend. Money comes anytime I need it. And we might be holding those thoughts and like really going, yep, doing the, the ching, ching, ching goes the money tree song. That's great. Those, it's not to say that those thoughts don't hold weight or aren't powerful, but we're still holding on to lack. And lack is the energy we're trying to let go of. It's not just about letting go of fear of not enough money. It's lack in general that we need to eradicate. And these thoughts of what I didn't get, those are thoughts of lack. It's lack. So whether you're looking at it, in a relationship or in your bank account, Venus rules both. Isn't that it? They're kind of connected. But we tend to look at lack around money. I mean, I know I do. I get really fixated with the lack and the money thing, and I'm like, okay, I can deal with it in this realm. Then you start to pull back and you see lack in your thinking. Here's the one where it's like, we got to really work on this one. Lack in thinking about yourself. That is a can of worms that if we pop that baby open, it would require a lot of honesty, a lot of awareness, because here's the thing. We're not just telling stories about our relationship with other people. We're not just telling stories about other people. The biggest and most, I'm looking for the word because it's detrimental even, stories we tell. They can be helpful stories, but most of the time we tell detrimental stories about ourselves. These detrimental stories put that overlay over us. We can't see our freaking self. So many people I've worked with, and myself included, we do this. We all have stories about ourselves. And the more we tell that story, the more we believe it. And the more we believe it, the more we create it. We only create what we believe. So at this time, I feel like the easier thing is, let's look at other people for a minute. It's always easier to look outside of ourselves to see where are the stories I tell. What story do I have about this person? And the thing is, we have stories about everyone. You probably have a story about me. If you've watched this enough, you probably have this thing that you perceive as Therese and who I am and what I do, right? We do that with everybody. It's okay. What we want to notice is that they're there, right? And when some stories are helpful. So if you like what I'm saying and it resonates for you, I hopefully have a good story about me in your mind that I'm a helpful person at least, or at least I resonate for you, right? There are plenty of people out there who don't have great stories about me. Of course, my ego is like, ah, with that, because no one wants to be the bad guy. But that's how bad guys get created in our minds. We've got a story about that person, and it usually is depending on what we were trying to get from them. We had an expectation not met, disappointment comes in, story starts to form about that, about what we can expect from that person in the future. And as we up level in consciousness, which is what this time period is blessing us with, it's getting us to see that is a very like two-dimensional character we created. There's not a lot there if we hold on to it. And to see what we're holding on to, we have to look at if we're focusing on what we didn't get. So with that, before I do karma cards, I wanted to see if we could bump up the positive energy, right? So we do have to look, we do have to acknowledge, we do have to sort of break things down and be like, okay, I got a story here. This is what I'm holding on to. This is what I can't accept about this. I can't accept that this person is generous because I have a story about how stingy they are or something like that. Can I go back and see what that was about and slowly let myself release it? So that's one part of the work. At the same time, there is a power in stories, and especially when it comes to the story we tell about ourselves. And we get to rewrite stories all the time. You're not fixed in anything. That's the beautiful thing about consciousness. It's the nature of consciousness is not fixed. It's always moving. It's always flowing. And the one thing we all know is a constant. The only constant is change. We can use that in our favor by understanding the story we tell about ourselves and choosing to rewrite the story. Right? This is a process. It's a process, but just know it can be done. So what I want to do is sort of look at our own positive energy right now. How can we create more positive energy? So let's take a moment and talk about that. These might sound super easy, but doing them will help to sort of, remove that filmy story layer and allow us to open up to higher levels of positive energy. So here's the first thing. Can you think about 5 things you are grateful for today? Even if you're watching this first thing in the morning, like you just woke up and you're like, oh, there's a new karma cards, and you open it and you're watching it. 5 things, right? Can you do it? See if you can do that. How about, when was the last time you smiled at a stranger? Just you were the one who sent out the positive energy. That one is super potent these days. So it's a very powerful way to send positive energy out into the world and increase your own feeling of goodwill. Okay, this one I really love. How often are you saying good morning to things like your plants, or saying thank you for your service to trees, or appreciating birds and telling them how beautiful they are, talking to your animal companions, things like that. I love this one. God is everywhere. God is everything, including inanimate objects, which some people go, sometimes you talk to your pencil or your pen. Sounds silly, but it's cultivating respect for source, for infinite intelligence all around you. The more you acknowledge this higher energy, the more it responds to you. So that's a way to increase positive energy. Talk to something, give it love. Remember, I don't know if you've watched the rice experiment I did years ago. It's in my YouTube. It's down probably quite a few videos now. But I did the rice experiment, and I opened the rice jars live on camera and reacted to what was there. And there is something to say about positive energy given out. There's so many people who have done experiments where they are showing the power of positive energy directed at something, that it is a life-affirming, life-giving energy. I've seen it with bean sprouts too. You can do this yourself. So here's a couple of ways to try it, just so you know it's the real deal. In case you're like, I don't know. I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're like, oh, I believe it. But in case you want to try, you can do it with rice, or you can do it with, I've heard, cut apples too, where you get some cut apples. You take an apple, cut it up into sections. You ignore one section completely. You say negative things at one section, and then you say positive things at another section. And the one that's positive stays fresh the longest, like abnormally long for a cut apple. You'd be like, oh, wow, this is still fresh to a piece of cut apple. Also, I've seen it done with, beans. So like you plant little beans and then they sprout. I've seen people do it with like the egg cart, where you plant half the beans on one side and half on the other. And then while they're gestating, you really concentrate just on one half. You sort of ignore the other side. And to the other side, you're like, grow little babies. You can do it. You're so powerful. You're magic. I love you. Have a great day. You just direct all this energy, and you'll see how vibrantly those beans grow with all that positive energy directed at it. So directing positive energy out into the world at things, just acknowledging source all around you and its response to you. And then as you see that happening, apply that to yourself. Oh boy, let's stop doing the harsh criticism if we can. At least try it for, I don't know, give yourself like a week-long challenge where you're directing positive statements at yourself, that you're going to be aware of how you're speaking to yourself, and you're befriending and loving yourself, and see what happens to you. Because just like those plants and that apple and the rice and all those other things, you respond to that positive reinforcement. And if we're expecting the outside world to give it to us, which we're conditioned to do, which is why social media works so well, because we're conditioned to the outside world to like us, that's where disappointment can happen. What if someone's not in the mood? What if everybody's down because everyone's waiting for someone else to respond to them? You have the power to send that love and appreciation, validation to yourself. And the more that you do that, the more you cultivate that loving friendship with yourself, which literally can change your story about you and literally will change your life. And with that, let's do some karma cards now. Okay, so if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how this works. I've got 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message that you have for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers. One in red, which are action-related answers for you, and a set in blue, which are outcome-related answers. And the way that you play is you tune in intuitively and see, what do you need this week? Are you needing action advice, or do you want to know how things resolve over the next week? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for January 26th through February 2nd. Okay. So the flavor of this reading is super interesting. We've got Mars, planet of action. So it feels like action-y, direct, right to the point energy. And it's in the sign of Aries, which is the sign it rules. So it's like double direct, action-y, direct. I mean, like I said that already. It's direct. It's a lot of directness. Okay, but I know I'm like reacting. I'm having a moment of reaction because the 12th house is back. And I swear to God, isn't this like the 3rd reading in a row where it's the same house? I feel like all month long we've gotten this. I think maybe once we got the 4th house. I'm having a moment. The last 2, and this one, 12th house, which is a subconscious mind, which is definitely what the sort of the basis of the whole conversation was about, was like, let's look at things, let's get clarity, insight on our internal workings. This also talks about these overwhelming events that feel bigger than you. They're outside of something you feel like you can control. So that's interesting that this just keeps coming up. Right. For those who are choosing action, your spiritual action is energize your willpower, seeking oneness with all there is. That's a nice wrap up to what I kind of ended with when we were talking about God in everything and connecting with that. It's just this, your willpower this is how you create. It's your I will. I will it to be so. I have decided. It's that power of decision. And if we take it back to what I was just talking about, it's the power of deciding about whether I'm going to focus on what I didn't get or whether I'm going to focus my energy on what I'm able to give, especially what I can give to myself, right? So I stop having all these expectations that feel like they don't get met, because I can meet a lot of my own expectations. That's what we want to get to. So there's energize your willpower, make the decision, seeking the connection with all there is, right? Connecting back to the oneness. So the whole point of this, of recognizing our patterns and healing them, is to create unification. Unification is that coming together, the oneness of self, which then becomes the oneness with others, which then becomes the oneness with all there is. So it's a very powerful project we're being asked to work on right now. And definitely it's the time. Like they're like, this is the time to get this stuff done. Mental action at this time. Confront what you think you know about philanthropy. Again, philanthropy is giving, right? It is our giving nature. So as I like feel into this, they're like, yeah, it's about what are you giving to yourself? You need to look at that, because a lot of times we leave ourselves out. We've had enough people in our lives who, when you made it about you, we're like, that's selfish, narcissistic even. And yet it's part of the equation. It's part of the equation that you've got to solve to create unification in the field, right? If you're not considering how you give to yourself, then you're constantly expecting to get it from others. And that's sort of the lesson right now is you got to give this to yourself to heal, right? To heal the rift of I didn't get it. That's how we feel. That's how we heal it, is through what we give to ourselves. So again, we're being asked to directly face that. Physical action at this time. Force yourself to do it your own way and keep your involvement hidden. This is always so weird, the keep your involvement hidden part. It's simply like, because with this kind of work, where we're trying to heal ourselves, we're not doing it for the validation of someone else. That's, again, we're trying to get something from, validate me. I healed something. Validate me. Tell me I did a good job so that I can acknowledge that I did it, right? So that's what it means. It's like this work is for you. It's to you and for you. And it's not about anyone else's 2 cents on how you did, right? You're being asked to get down there and do this work. And they're saying, do it your own way. So the willingness to get in there, the willingness to get in there, be honest with yourself and look at it. You'll find a way where it makes sense to you. So if my analogies of going down into the underworld, meeting these shadow aspects, if that's not resonating for you, drop it. Just let it go. If it's too much of a story for you to like get to the meat and potatoes of it, let it go. You have a way in. It's your way in, and it's perfect, right? I can only express what makes sense to me, but it is time to face it. Now, the force yourself comes up at the beginning. That's from Mars. Mars wants to just get in there and get it done. Why it's using force, why it's suggesting force, which is not something I would normally suggest, is because resistance to doing this is very strong. Because we also at the same time want to avoid responsibility. I wish we could figure out that balance, but most people, when you tell them you have to take responsibility for your pain, they're like, what? No, they did that, right? And this is where it's tricky, because there's a lot of overlay on that. We get a lot of stories up from herself about why this is not actually about my feelings and my perspective. It's about what someone did to me. It's about the thing that happened that I had no control over, that the ego really wants to latch onto that and make it about that, versus what am I telling myself this means? What am I deciding about my worth or value, or what am I saying I'm incapable of because that happened? That's the part that we're being asked to be responsible for. And resistance is very high. The ego guards you from that. Want to know why? Because as long as you don't face that, the ego gets to run the show. The ego gets to be in charge. It gets to run rampant. And as soon as you hone in on that aspect and start clearing it, the ego it's like pushed into the background. It doesn't get to run this part of the show anymore. And it has to go figure out, it's got to scramble and figure out, where do I reattach so I get control again? It'll find something. It always does. So don't worry, the ego will have something to do. But it really fights to keep its ground. It doesn't give it up easily. So that's why force is being recommended at this time. It's not to steamroll or bully yourself or exhaust yourself. It's really about understanding that this kind of work creates strong resistance, and yet you want to heal, that's where you go. That's the work you do. Okay, so now let's look at outcomes for Mars in Aries in the 12th house of the subconscious mind. All right, so the spiritual outcome at this time is the drive for energies to meet the challenge of your faith. That's an interesting statement. I feel like this one's speaking about that resistance too, because with resistance is doubt. I mean, think about it. If I told you you could heal this if you're willing to face it and look at it, and then the resistance is like, oh, but that's my mom's fault, or da-da-da, the story comes in. When that rearing resistance comes up, do you believe you're in a state of faith in that moment, or a state of doubt that you're going to heal if you do that, if you face that work? Probably in doubt. With resistance is the looming thoughts of doubt that this is BS. I don't have to do this. But whatever wants to come in. So that's challenging of faith. That's challenging your faith and your ability to overcome the stories you tell, including overcoming the stories you can tell about yourself. So what we're getting here is you're going to get the drive to meet that resistance head on. It's like doubt's going to rear its head, but you're going to be right there ready to be like, no, I got this. I saw you. I saw that you were coming to my party and you're not invited. Mental outcome at this time, the confronting of your desires regarding hidden tendencies. This is very much kind of on that same page. Desires, hidden tendencies, right? So this is what I was saying is like, we've got to invoke the higher power, bring it with us, so we have protection, support, and love around us as we go in and face these things that we've set up for ourselves. Because again, the hidden tendency is the ego trap. And this is especially sticky for those of us with an ego that is ego is always about separation. That's what it's designed for. It was created by God to go through the illusion of third density, which is the illusion of separation. You needed an ego which says, I'm over here, you're over there, therefore we are separate and different. We need that. The ego is always about separation, and it separates through superiority or inferiority. Either I'm better than you or I'm worse than you. And this is a sticky area when we're going in and looking at what's wounding us and the deep held subconscious beliefs about our value and worth can really trigger that ego that's going to be like, yep, you're the worst. You are absolute. Look at you. Putting everything on everyone else. You selfish thing, right? It is going to rear its head. And this is saying the confronting of that is going to come in. I think it's a good thing. It might not sound like the experience you'd like to have, but it is the experience we need to have too, right? We have to learn how to befriend and love our ego as we understand what its function is. Like, thank you for your service, ego. Thank you for helping me navigate this period called the choice, which I talk about in my podcast. So if you haven't heard that, that explains what I mean when I say the choice. The ego is a gift. Believe it or not, it's a gift, but it's got a function, and its function is separation. I need to prove to you that everything's separated. So part of moving up and out of third density is transcending that ego, right? Where we are like, no, I'm not. I might look like I'm separated. And then, yeah, I got some unique features because everybody's got a little something special, like an extra awesome sauce special feature. And yet I'm all connected. I'm connected to you. I'm connected to this. I'm tied to that tree. You're a part of me. So is the sky. I'm like, we're all a part of God. This is amazing, right? So that is what we're transcending to, is that awareness that this was simply a function to help us make a choice. And once we've made that choice, we then get to continue the experience. And we don't have to take that portion with us because it doesn't serve us after our big choice is made. So even though the confronting of this ego isn't something that we're like, yay, I get to go duke it out with my ego, it's absolutely essential to transcend and move forward. And it looks like we're getting a nice dose of, like a nice comfy dose of confidence to do it right now. So I would say lean into that moment. If it's coming up for you, it's like, yeah, lean in. You got this energetic backing right now that this is probably one of the easier times to do that work. Physical action at this time. Action resulting from the honesty and strength of large institutions or overwhelming events. So that comes from the 12th house, the large institution, overwhelming event. And that's just talking about the things that feel so big and outside of our control because our subconscious mind is so big and it's actually outside of our control. You can't stop your subconscious mind. It is collecting every bit of data around you right now without your conscious awareness. It knows what's happening down the street, it knows what's happening on a cosmic level. It understands what's going on in the collective consciousness, even if you're really focused in on what you're working on in front of you. So it's beyond your control. So action resulting from the honesty and strength of large institutions or overwhelming events. And this is like, with this, I really feel like it's like subconscious mind is the word that's best fitting here. As we go into this, so all that information about your stories, about what you're still holding on to, what you didn't get, what your ego thinks of you, is all stored inside of you. You can't get a wrong answer as long as you're just going in and looking. Like the key is, I'm going to honestly look. So I'm going to look at it even if I might not like what I find. You can't get a wrong answer. It's all stored inside of you. And what you find once you go in, it's going to naturally inspire an action from you, whether it's to, go for a walk in nature because you want to connect with things, or to let something go that you've been holding on to see someone in a different way and maybe start acknowledging that, yeah, I've suppressed this aspect of you because it didn't match my story. Something's going to come from this that'll be externalized. So there are some periods when we do this work where it's all very internal and it just kind of, it works itself out in here, but it stays inside. And this week, what it's saying is, like, you do that work with the biggest part of yourself, the subconscious mind, and it results in an exterior action. You're going to act from that place. Something will shift for you. So that's the beauty, is that no matter how stuck you feel, the stuckness is coming from a thought that became a belief, that became a way of being. And as soon as we start looking at what was that thought that's creating the belief or the story I tell, then we can start shifting it. It's like it becomes very malleable. Where it felt really hard and kind of stuck in place, it actually starts to liquefy and become very malleable. And you can either dissolve it completely or mold it into something that actually serves you in a better way and allows you to serve others in a better way. So with that, I'm sending you so much love. Mwah! Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so that you know the next time I release a new video. Until then, stay magical.